as I was saying to the listeners, the catalyst for this meeting was your recognition in the Queen's Birthday Honours list in June, just a few weeks ago. So maybe, because the citation was very broad, and looking at your background, you've done many, many things. Let's start very broadly to describe why they said you've got this award, and then we'll go into some of those items in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Antonio, and it's a pleasure to be with you. And I think it's such an important role that you're pursuing, maintaining that engagement of Italian Australians and the connection with community and culture. So I am delighted to be able to be part of this interview, and more broadly, happy to help at any time. So Queen's Birthday Honours, any sort of honours, I'm not actually sure why they arose, and none of us who do community work do it for any recognition. We do it because there is such a fulfillment in being part of a community, being an active part of a community rather than a professional lawyer or finance person in my case as well. But the areas that I've been involved in over the last 20 or 30 years have really revolved around three aspects, if you like. The business career is important. I was fortunate enough to lead the largest professional services business in Sydney, indeed in Australia, at PwC. That was such a delight. It's a rare opportunity to engage with so many clients in business, so many members of staff, 5,000 people. That was a 10-year journey for me, and it was terrific. That was my day job. But people, so many people, particularly multicultural people, I would say, have got a passion to give back to the community that served us well and our parents and our grandparents well. So I've been involved quite a bit in the multicultural area. I was chair of the Italian Chamber of Commerce in Sydney and nationally for about the last 10 years. And that was a wonderful opportunity to give back to the Italian Australian community. I've also been involved in community areas such as healthcare and education. So I'm on the board of the University of Western Sydney, which is a part of Sydney that I grew up in. And indeed, when I went to university, there was no university in Western Sydney. How times have changed for Western Sydney generally, but particularly in relation to education. And that's an absolute delight. And I've also been chair of a medical research institute that's associated with the iconic RPA hospital in Camperdown here and Sydney University, and that's called the Centenary Institute for Medical Research. So my passion for healthcare, for education, for the multicultural community is on top of my day job. And to be honest, it's those community involvements that give so much more pleasure. And I think from a recognition from the Australia Day Awards, that was what was identified, the multicultural and community engagement. And I'm proud of that, but it's not the reason why we obviously do those things.
Cool. Well, let's start a little bit with PwC and the consulting work. I also see you've got a legal background, so you've put together management and law. And what were there any particular specialties that you were involved with?
I was involved in the tax area for many years, so taxation, and applied it to infrastructure projects, development, M&A activities, if you like, through businesses. So largely from that tax and legal expertise applied in the infrastructure and M&A world. Okay,
so hence the articles around infrastructure and the vision exactly. for Sydney.
Exactly.
And you've left PwC just fairly recently, yeah?
I have. On the 31st of March, I left PwC and am now developing a private consulting business and also board opportunities.
So you mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, ICHI, but I think you've also been involved in football, soccer, we want to call it.
Yes. I'm currently on the board of Football Australia. Yes.
Aha. Okay, so I saw some tweets yesterday, and Mick Scarcella is going to follow you up on that one.
He is.
Okay, so well, let's talk about the football Australia and why this is important.
Well, for me, Football Australia is an opportunity to support the world's biggest sport. You know, il calcio è il sport del mondo. And for me, as I was growing up as a young multicultural background person, football was the common language that brought communities together, whether we were Italian, Greek, Lebanese, Irish, Vietnamese, everybody was the same on the football field. And I think that is a very important metaphor for Australia. You know, we are the most multicultural country in the world, and we largely are a very tolerant and accepting community. So if I can help promote football as part of our sporting diplomacy, if you like, overseas, it'll help maintain that unity amongst our various nationalities in Australia.
Do your parents call you Joseph or Giuseppe?
Giuseppe.
Well, I made this indirect reference to Mick Scarcella, who's one of my regular guests, and he's got a fascinating background, Italian and Indigenous. And he always says that growing up in Western Sydney, very multicultural, reflected in soccer, football, and in his case, his family's case, through the Marconi Club, it created a wonderful environment where someone from his background would not always be so well integrated in mainstream community. Yeah, so that's a very important element. Now, you've been involved with a particular club.
So my background in football was with the Marconi Club. So
yep.
So we share a common bond there. It was a club that many generations of Italians attended, supported, and then brought their children and grandchildren. So it's a wonderful family community club, and that linked for me into supporting the Western Sydney Wanderers, the Sydney FC, the professional leagues, and then being involved as well now on the national governing body for the whole sport in Australia, which is a real privilege.
And we've had actually a local Italian Adelaidean being involved with football at high levels, Basil Scarcella, yes, who at one stage was the Oceania rep for FIFA, right? He was
indeed, yes.
He's been in London now for a few years. I understand he regularly visits the village in Abruzzo. They're from Genzano. Cool. So calcio and the Chamber of Commerce, Italian Chamber of Commerce, is vibrant and active in Sydney.
It is. The chambers of commerce all around the country are a reflection of the community at the time. So over the last 50 years, the Chamber of Commerce in Sydney was a reflection of the individual entrepreneurial leaders, you know, the migrants from the 1950s and 60s who built their own businesses, worked hard, and the Chamber was a meeting place, a support mechanism, an intellectual sharing as they are involved in their business. That was a very important connection. What we're doing over the last 10 years is to modernise the chambers so that we are supporting and connecting with the next generation of Italian Australians, or in our case, in the 50s, the generation was of Italian Australians. Now the generation going forward are of Australian Italians. So the Chamber has to be much more connected to the next generations of Italians who are in business, they are in government roles, they are running their own businesses. So a much more open engagement with the Italian community than perhaps 20 or 30 years ago. So it needs to stay relevant and stay modern.
So that's important work. It's a pity we don't have one in Adelaide in South Australia. Who knows? Maybe it could be possible to recreate.
We need your help, Antonio, to get one restarted in Adelaide.
Yeah, I'm going to have to have a chat with the consul and see what.
Indeed.
Are you still involved with the Chamber of Commerce?
I completed my 10-year term, and under our constitution, I need to step off for a couple of years and then perhaps go back on and support them. So I'm not involved formally at the moment.
Tell us, where does the name Carrozzi come from?
Well, the Carrozzi name comes from Abruzzo, la provincia di L'Aquila in the Abruzzo region, the most beautiful area in Italy. And it's an area that myself and the family have visited. We try and go every year, essentially. COVID willing, of course, but it's a wonderful part of the world and a wonderful opportunity to reconnect.
And I was talking just yesterday, the day before, with a gentleman called Michelangelo Rucci, a sports writer here in Adelaide, and his family. He's from Abruzzo too, and he tries to go back. We used to go back every year, but not last year, of course. Interestingly, he goes for their winter. So he's got the winter in Australia and the winter in Italy, and it's reasonably cold. Allora, di dove in Abruzzo? Where can we, let's pinpoint a bit more.
From a little town called Acergi. It's in the Gran Sasso region, most beautiful mountains, and there's a ski resort there, and there's also a laboratorio di nuclear research in the Gran Sasso mountain ranges itself. So it's now known much less for its farming history, which is where my parents came from, and much more now as either a ski area or, importantly, for scientific research and nuclear research in the mountains. A very, very important initiative of the government.
Yes, because it's ideal conditions deep in the rocks.
In the Apennines, in the Apennine Mountains, yeah, indeed.
Tua moglie, your wife, also from Italian background?
So my wife is from the Czech Republic. So she's from Prague, and we met at university. And so we both share that strong cultural connection to Europe together. And we love skiing. So Italy or the Czech Republic or Austria are famous places for us.
Yeah, and beautiful beers in Prague.
Wonderful.
Once my wife and I were looking for some beers in the local supermarket, and a gentleman came up to us and said, "Would you like some help?" So these are all Euro beers, and he gave us all the stuff which was much more local. We were looking at Czech beers anyway, but he gave us some really lovely suggestions for different character that you get in the beers. Now, where are we going with your music request?
So the music request is from Andrea Bocelli. I mean, he is a obviously worldwide famous, performer, but he's a person that my wife and I had the pleasure of meeting in his hometown in Laiatico 3 years ago. So we had a really wonderful time with Andrea and his wonderful family.
And I will, yes, again, say thank you to Giuseppe Carrozzi for having come on to Radio Italia 1 Adelaide. And we'll go with Andrea Bocelli and Ed Sheeran.
Grazie mille, Antonio.
Amo soltanto te. And hope to hear from you, and we'll talk to you again in future.
Indeed. Thank you so much. A presto.